right. Challenge episode number 3. Josh challenged me to a 5-minute episode on Jack the Ripper. Um, I believe he challenged me incorrectly. Uh, the idea being that I discussed in one of our episodes that I could explain Jack the Ripper in 5 minutes or less. His actual challenge to me was to explain why Jack the Ripper's such a popular figure of the serial killer world or whatever. I don't think that's the right question he meant to ask. I think the real question was, who is Jack the Ripper? I think that's the answer that he really wanted, so I'm going to do both things and try to get it in 5 minutes. So, I'm going to do a little beginning here, and then I should be able to get through all this. So, to answer his actual challenge, the reason that Jack the Ripper is so important. So Jack the Ripper terrorized the Whitechapel area of London in the late 1880s. There were 5 prostitutes that were killed and dismembered to some degree. Actually, not even dismembered, like disemboweled. And the accuracy in which the reproductive organs were removed was at a surgical level. There have been many suspects over the course of almost 250 years, but I'm going to offer you the 2 most likely suspects that I think are pertinent to kind of talk about, and then I'm going to also explain why I think he was considered one of the most popular serial killers even to this day. So you have to understand that at the time of the murders in England, there was a very popular, they're almost mini novels, short stories, and they're called penny dreadful, penny stories, is why they were called penny dreadfuls. So they cost a penny, and they were just quick horror stories, like Frankenstein, stuff like that. Basically, people enjoyed getting a spook, and so at the time that all these murders happened, that was a very popular medium. So the newspapers and journalism really kind of ran with it. There were some letters, and there was a letter and a postcard that were supposedly attributed to Jack the Ripper. No one really knows that if those were actually penned by Jack the Ripper, especially considering they didn't really offer any definitive details regarding the murders. So I think that it was really one of more of the reason that he was so popular and remains so popular is still the same thing, the same mechanism that we use today on the news, which is if it bleeds, it leads. And of course, the mystery of no one seems to know who the actual Jack the Ripper was when he ended. Okay, so I think that's the reason he's remained so popular. Mystery and the gore value of it. Now on to the likely who did it. So in the movie From Hell with Johnny Depp, it came out like 2001, I think. That's based on a series of comic books by Alan Moore called From Hell. It was also very popular in the 70s. That it was someone from the royal court was covering up a pregnancy that one of the royal family had fostered with a prostitute in the Whitechapel area. And the point of the 5 murders was to get rid of not only the person who was pregnant, but it was also to wipe out any of the witnesses to that this bloodline may have been spread amongst a prostitute. That movie actually names a surgeon in the royal court named William Gull. I believe that's his name. He was in his 70s at the time of the Whitechapel murders, and had suffered 2 strokes by the time Jack the Ripper was running around killing people. I think a more likely suspect, and actually would have been in the royal court, and actually attended to Queen Victoria, was a surgeon by the name of Sir John Williams. He was actually a reproductive surgeon who spent a lot of time performing abortions in the London area, especially for prostitutes. He actually wrote a book on infertility and ovarian cancer, and had a very, very exclusive and very detailed idea of the female reproductive system, and basically he was a surgeon. He had ties to the royal court, and if there was going to be anyone that was going to cover up one of those kind of things, he would have likely been a good ally to the royal family. He was in his 40s when Jack the Ripper was going around, and 4 years after Jack the Ripper's last murder, he was actually given a baronship from the royal family. So I would conclude that if it had ties to the royal family, it was probably Sir John Williams. That's a big conspiracy theory kind of thing. I don't usually tend to go for conspiracy theories, but that one actually, if there was a conspiracy theory that I kind of attributed to, it would definitely, I would think it would be Sir John Williams. Would be a one of the highest and most likely suspects, considering his skill level, his attachment to the royal family, the whispers and rumors of an illegitimate pregnancy with a prostitute in that area, and the idea that serial killers don't stop. They either die or they move. So I don't think he was actually a serial killer. I think he was actually killing the women, making sure none of them were pregnant, by removing their reproductive organs, and basically trying to send a message to the rest of the prostitutes who may have known that he didn't have to continue the work. The second most likely, actually the suspect that the lead investigator of the Jack the Ripper case, he never named while he was alive, was a man by the name of Montague Druitt. Montague Druitt was in his early 30s. He lived close to the Whitechapel area. He was the son of a physician, a local physician in the area, and he was subsequently near the time of the Jack the Ripper murders. He was dismissed from the school that he worked at for some illicit behavior. So his mother was said to have suffered from clinical depression and some other mental illnesses, and the reason that he was a suspect was basically based on his behavior, and the fact that he'd watched his father as a physician growing up, which would have given him some knowledge of how to perform the organ removals that happened during the Jack the Ripper's time. The reason he's also considered a prime suspect is on the night of the last murder of Jack the Ripper, he committed suicide. Some say he committed suicide. There were also rumors that 2 of the lead constables who were investigating the Jack the Ripper case actually drowned him and made it look like a suicide. And then there were rumors abound that went through the streets after the man's body was found that Jack the Ripper was dead, and had drowned himself and taken his own life. So I think it was the media actually was the one to kind of drive this story and to keep it shrouded in mystery, and and not really kind of let some of the real details of the investigation kind of out. And then a lot of it got washed away by time. I think if there was two suspects, it's either Montague or it is Dr. John Williams. It depends on what fits a little better and your understanding. My personal pick for the murderer is Sir John Williams. He had extensive training in the surgical field of the reproductive systems of females. He worked in the area, and then he was miraculously promoted to a position within the royal family, and then he, as a physician and surgeon, and then he was given a baronship. And I know stuff like that does happen from time to time, but his work, maybe covering up some dirty secrets for the royal family, would have made this a lot easier for the justification from the royal family. I know I've blown past the 5-minute side of this conversation, but I used at least 2 minutes or 3 minutes of it to explain the episode, and I answered 2 sets of questions all at once. So I would say, Sir John Williams is Jack the Ripper, and I would say that at about 90% certainty. And then I would also say that the only reason that this was ever as important in the history logs is the brutality level, people wanting to read more, wanting to know about that violence, and continuing to chat about it to this day. Here I am talking about it in 2020. So this Shep from Based on True Events. Fuck you, Josh.